Today in class, I want to talk about the topic of vowel length or vowel duration, and we're going to look at the E and I vowels, and we're going to talk about how these are often taught and what I think would be really helpful to know in terms of how these vowels change depending on where they are in your sentence and what word they're in. So I'm going to walk you through several details here. One way that vowel sounds are often taught are teachers will say short I or long I, short E or long E. And this happens some in schools here as well for spelling. The thing I don't like about that is that it's misleading because we don't actually say the same sounds. And so it's that's more helpful for spelling. It's less helpful for pronunciation. So rather than short and long vowels, I prefer to call them by say the sound. For example, we have the E sound. We often spell that with EE or EA. The IPA is this little lowercase I symbol. And I'll call that one green tea. That just helps us know that the E vowel we're talking about. I also will teach my students, and in my courses, I'll teach about how that's a tense vowel versus the I vowel, which I call it's in words like big, little, pig. It's the lax vowel. And so this is the one that teachers will teach as long, and this one they will teach as short. If everything else is equal, E is held a little bit longer than I. But the problem happens where in your language you may have only the E vowel and not an I vowel. And if you say your E vowel but just don't hold it very long, it's not a correct I vowel. So for example, if I'm trying to say bid or bit and I just say bead or beat, it's not the same. I'm just doing my E for a short time. So that's the problem that happens with short and long, in my opinion. It's much more helpful to learn the sound, what words it's in, how it's spelled, and really get that tense E versus that lax I sound. The context where that vowel happens will tell us how long the vowel is held. So here's some examples. For both bead and beat, we have the tense E vowel, but it's longer in bead because the D sound is voiced. When a vowel is followed by a voiced consonant, D or G or we hold it a little bit longer. And when we say beat, we still have that tense E sound, but it's shorter because the T is a voiceless consonant. We don't have to keep our voice on. It makes the vowel shorter. So the difference between bead and beat is in the length. And in fact, that's a very important thing to know because when I say bead, I don't really say my D very prominently. I like a bead, I like a bit, or I like a beat. I see a bead, I hear the beat. We don't always say bead and beat. So to be able to tell the difference between those two, any pairs with D or T, it's the vowel length, how long I hold the vowel that tells me. So bead, longer, beat, shorter, both have an unreleased stop sound. Words like bead are fairly easy for you to say accurately. Beat, you might have a harder time, and often what happens for non-native speakers is they end up with a sound, here's my E and here's my I in the vowel height. They end up with a sound kind of in between, like I, which is not really E or I, it's sort of in between. And so when you're saying beat, the common accent error pattern is to say it more like beat. You might not be saying bit with a true I sound, but your E needs to be more tense and needs to be the same sound you say in bead, just a shorter duration. So beat is one of the more difficult words. This is also true for things like keep. I often hear people say more like kip instead of keep. And then when we come to the I vowel, which some teachers call the short I, it's the lax high front vowel, the I sound. We have the same thing happens. When I say bid, I need to hold that I a little longer versus bit, it's a little bit shorter. So overall, this one's the longest. This is the next longest. This is the next longest, and this is the shortest. It has to do with the context more than what the vowel is. So bit is probably a lot easier for most people to say. It's in a bit of this, because it's typically shorter because of that T. And so it's easier for people to make that lax vowel when it's short. Bid is where I'll hear more errors. People have trouble making that lax vowel and holding it for a long time. So they might say more like bid, that gets a little too tense because of that length. So fairly complex and detailed, but useful to know if you struggle with E and I, especially if you're a more advanced speaker and you have your E and I in a lot of contexts. This is one place where you might find it still gives you trouble. Other examples of where I often hear errors on this are things where we have the E sound in a place where it needs to be short and unstressed. So in a word like easy, it's the same vowel in both syllables, but my first E is long because it's the stressed syllable. My second E is short because it's the unstressed syllable, easy. So I'll often hear people say this sound, the E, the second E, too lax. It'll sound like easy, easy. They will use an I or an It doesn't have that tense E sound because they're not holding it long enough. So practicing easy, matching the vowel, even though the first one is long and the second one is short. Also difficult is when we have an I sound in the stressed syllable and an E sound in the unstressed syllable. This is probably the most difficult because we have to be doing these two most challenging combinations, which is a short in duration E and a long in duration I. Busy, busy. This is very often people will say busy or busy, or they'll use this in between vowel for both. That's another error that we have, is that our mouth wants to do what's called assimilation. It wants to make the two sounds in a word the same. So it's hard for us to say busy, busy, if that's not part of our native language sound system. So for that, just practicing biz, busy, z, making sure that you're saying it slowly, saying all of the sounds, and then working up to saying it naturally like busy. Other words like busy, city, pretty, etc. Also words that end with itty or issy like quality, quantity, simplicity, etc. That itty ending is challenging because it has the I, the E, and the flap T. So I do have videos for that here in the members section and also on the channel page. On our website, our Sounds of English course walks through these kinds of details for both of these vowels and all of the vowels of English. So that's a great resource for you to work more, to know which words have which sound, to be able to differentiate E and I, and work on that vowel length piece. Those of you who are gifted memberships, as I mentioned, you can have access to the online courses for a month. So I would suggest the Sounds of English course is a great one to take and begin to explore. And then another point about vowel duration is that we hold the vowel longer in a stressed word in the sentence. So these same words, bead and bit, are going to be different length in duration depending on where they come in the sentence. So if I'm saying, I like the bead, that word bead is stressed. I like the bead. So I like the is fast and bead is stretched. It was already going to be long because of the word, and here it's even longer because it's the stressed word in the sentence. I like the bead. Same thing happens. I like the bit. Bit needs to be long. Of course, it's shorter than bead in this context. I like the bead. I like the bit because the I and the t are shorter in duration, but it's longer than I like the because it's the stressed word. So this is another place where people will have difficulty. They might say, I like the beat, because they're having to hold it longer. It makes instead of making the I vowel longer, they tend to go with the tense vowel. But we need to keep that lax vowel there. Okay, and then if I like the bead is long, but in a bead of sweat is my stressed word and it's long. So the bead is going to be shorter here, a bead of sweat. So I like the bead, long bead, a bead of sweat, same E vowel in both, but this one is shorter in duration because of where it is in the sentence. Same thing with I like the bit, that bit is long, but a bit of time, time is long because it's the stressed word in the sentence. So this bit, I like the bit, is longer in duration than this bit, a bit of time. This one is easier for most non-native speakers. This one is more difficult. A bead of sweat, because you have to say bead quickly, even though it has the E vowel with the D, which makes it a longer E vowel compared to beat. So again, many different factors affect this. When I'm talking, I can't be thinking, oh, it's the stressed word, it's the tense vowel. It's very difficult. We can't really think about this as we're speaking. So it's really useful to practice the places where it goes wrong, like beat and bid, easy and busy, building those into different sentences and practicing with the same word in different contexts can be very helpful. So doing sentences like this where one is longer and one is shorter. Also, of course, I like the bead, I like the bit, making a comparison or contrast between those minimal pair type words. You can find a lot of minimal pair help in the Sounds of English course on speechmodification.com. And also we have a playlist here on the channel for minimal pairs or words that are similar. So if you find that helpful in this video, you'll find those other videos for those minimal pair words quite helpful. Do feel free to leave those in a comment on this video or any of my videos. I'll be back tomorrow with our regular word of the day, and Saturday we'll have our live question and answer class that's open to everyone. If you have questions and requests, don't forget to leave those in a comment on this video or any of my videos, and I'll cover that for you quickly because you are now a channel member. Thanks so much for your support, and I look forward to seeing you in our next members class. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, if you want to sound like a native speaker, you can do it. speechmodification.com. Bye everyone. Thanks for being a channel member.